this episode of Pill Out Garage, we're servicing the V-Star. Alright, so for oil, we're going to be using a Penrite 10W50 MST oil. It does recommend a 10W40 for the V-Stars, but over here it's so hot in summer that anything over 35 degrees, I notice the bike starts to get a bit knocky and clunky, so I'm going for a slightly thicker oil to try and help with that. Now, filters, I'm going to use a KN145 K&N filter. I'll leave the link for these. They're pretty cheap. They're actually pretty much the same price as a standard filter, so I figured why not go for something a little bit better. And then spark plugs. Doing an NGK. I'm actually not sure if these are the right ones or not, but come on, focus. But we will soon find out. I've got a feeling that these might be slightly too hot. We'll see. I don't think I've got a small enough drain pan. Okay, so step one. Make sure that you've got a small drain pan that will fit underneath the sump of your motorbike. Because I don't have one. So we're gonna have to go get one. Okay, so we're going to be undoing this bolt here. Got an 18mm socket with a universal joint that clears the frame. Oh. Okay, so while that's draining out, we'll undo this cover. This is a 4mm Allen key. This cover's actually nothing. This doesn't have anything behind it. So don't worry too much about oil coming out because it won't. Okay, so once you've got the cover off, you've got these 3 bolts here and then these 2 on the outside to undo. So these bolts on the outside and the bigger ones in the middle are going to be a 5mm hex. So you want to go around and just crack them all first. And when you take this case off, a little bit of oil will come out. So just be wary of that. So take note of where these went, because you'll see some of these are different sizes. So the one from the bottom, one from the top. Make sure you don't get them mixed up when you're putting them back together. There you go, so these 2 that run parallel to each other in a line are both the longer versions, and the other ones are all the small bolts. Alright, now this should just pop off. A little bit of massaging. Now you gotta be careful, because in my case the O-ring was stuck in this housing, so just be careful not to damage that if you're not going to be replacing it. And make sure that you've got a rag or something soft to put your casing down on, otherwise you'll scratch it up for no good reason. It's always a good thing to just inspect your filter, make sure that you don't see any bits of metal, nothing too crazy going on in there. Now. Alright, so the next thing is to grab a cleanish rag and just make sure that you get any leftover bits of oil out. Looks like we've got pretty much all of it. It's the same thing with the case. You want to make sure that you clean it up. Just get any of this extra oil out of here with a new rag. Alright, now this mating face here, and just push the rag into that, go around, make sure that there's nothing in there. Check the rag as well. Like in mine there's a little bit of gunk. Just looks like oil sludge, but it's still good to do it, make sure. Alright, I'm happy with that. Give it a bit of a wipe down. Don't stress too much about oil on the outside, I'll show you how to get that off in a bit. Alright, so now we're just going to do the reverse. I've got my new oil filter here. Now, you'll see that there's a higher part on this end, and then this part's flat just with the little rubber on it. So this is going to go into the motor, so you want to be looking at the flat part. It won't push in quite as far as what the original one did. That's okay, it's going to sit there. Okay, so the next step, make sure you put your O-ring in here, make sure that it's clean. I like to leave a little bit of the old oil on mine, same as when you're putting an oil filter into a car, but everybody is different. As I said before, long bolts, they go one in here, and one directly next to it. You don't want to do these up too tight to start with. So get them all threaded in nicely. Alright, you can still move the case around if you need to adjust it. Okay, so with tightening these up, you want to work your way around the case. Just make sure that they're all nipped up. Not too tight. Now I'm sure that there is a correct torque setting to do these two, but I live in the land of sending things, so I'm going to tighten them up to pretty much the same as what it felt like to undo them. Keep in mind that you are putting this into a cast housing, the screws, so if you do them up too tight, then you will definitely split them, and that will not be fun for anybody. And one thing as well, I like to use, just a side note, I like to use these Allen keys to do things like this because you really can't over tighten stuff. I mean, look at how much surface area you've got to grab, you know, you're never going to break anything by using one of these, or you shouldn't anyway. And then you just go around one last time and make sure that they all feel the same. Now we'll put the cover back on. Now this doesn't have an O-ring or anything in it, as I said, it's just a pretty case basically, it's all it does, just look good. Seeing that you can actually get billet versions of this. That'd be pretty cool. Same thing with this. Just get all the screws threaded in before you go too crazy with tightening them up, because people need to move around a bit so you can get them in. These are a 4mm Allen key head. And this you really don't have to go crazy with tightening it, just enough that it's not going to come loose. And that is the oil filter in. Now we'll go and put the drain plug in the sump, and then we'll start filling it up with oil. Now, just like the oil filter, this is pretty much just the reverse of what we did before. Make sure you clean off this bolt before you put it back in. Make sure there's no debris or anything around it. Alright, and then again, 18mm socket with a universal joint extension on a ratchet. And the same thing as well with the rest of it. You don't want to go crazy tight because it is going into a cast housing, and it will give you issues if you strip that out. That's good. Okay, so next we're going to take out our oil filler plug. And then what we're going to do is there is a sight glass. Okay, it's hard to see, but right there is a sight glass. Next to it tells you how much oil you should be putting into your motorcycle, which is 2.5 litres according to that. So what we're going to do is we're going to fill it up, and then we'll put, say, 2 litres in it, and then we'll stand the bike up and then have a look and see what the sight glass says. One thing that's pretty cool about the Penrite bottles is that they've actually got this really cool little filler on it with a breather. Really good design idea. So this way you won't get that like clugging, you won't make a mess. It's going to be good. Now the way that we're going to figure out whether we've got 2 litres in there or not is on the front of the oil bottle. It's got levels. So we know that it has got 4 litres in it to start with, which when it's level will be there. Half litre, 1 litre, 1.5 litres, 2 litres, so on and so forth. So we'll fill it till it's at halfway, and then we'll have a look and check the sight glass. Side note, I'm going to take this bung out because I didn't read the instructions. I don't think I may have done it well. You know what? This thing doesn't work at all. It chipped me off. I'm not exactly sure how that's supposed to work, because it's not working. This doesn't make any sense. I'm very confused about how this is supposed to work. Take back my previous statement. Bottle pour sucks. Okay. Where are we at? We're at the 2 litre mark. So we'll keep going. Bottle reckons that's just over 2 litres. And sight glass is full. So that is perfect. Take this off. Just throw it in the bin, I guess. Now we'll put the filler plug back in, and the oil change is complete. Done. Alright, so to pull the spark plug out, you're going to need an 18mm long socket an extension, your ratchet, and a set of long nose pliers. Alright, so first you're going to remove the boot. And we'll take our socket, gently place that down onto the spark plug. Once it starts to get loose, you can take the ratchet off and just turn it by hand. And then we have our spark plug. Alright, so with your spark plug, one good thing to note is you always want to check the colour of it when you take them out. Now, a black spark plug would indicate that it is running rich. A gold spark plug, or tan, which is pretty much what that side of the spark plug is, indicates that it's pretty much perfect. And if you've got a white spark plug, then you're running lean. Grab your new spark plug out of the box. And it's always good to just double check you got the same part number, the same length, all that stuff before you actually put it in, because that will cause you grief if you don't. Now, the needle nose pliers, you can either use them to sort of coast it in, or you can just put it into the socket and just sort of rest it in and find its seat. You'll see what I mean. So I've got a torch here just so you can see what I'm talking about, but it's not really necessary to have one. So you can gently rest this down, and then you'll feel it end up in the hole. And then you just start slowly turning the thread. Make sure it doesn't start cross-threading or catching it or anything weird. And once you think you've got it, you can take this out just to double check. We can see that it's in. Perfect. Keep going. Alright, now that's getting too tight for my hand. I'll put the ratchet on. Now spark plugs have a crush washer on the end of them, which you can see it's this bit here. So this needs to be flat. It works sort of like a spring washer. It stops it from getting loose and wobbling back out. So you need to crush that down to keep it in place, but you don't want to over tighten these because you can break them. So using a ratchet the size that I've got here, generally I'll hold it here, and you'll actually feel the washer crush, and then you'll feel it get tight, which it is there. Now if you only ever do it up with this much of the ratchet, you can really never over tighten them. Alright, put the wire back in. You'll hear it click. Make sure it's on there good. And you have just changed spark plugs. Repeat the same process for the other side, and it's done. After starting the bike for the first time, I always let it run for a minute or so, and then I just go around and check everywhere, check the ground, make sure that there's no oil leaking from any of the places that we've worked on, no new oil on the ground. Now, I'll show you how to clean up all the oil off the engine the easy way. Okay, so I use Bowden's Orange Agent. It's a degreaser, but it won't take off any of your polish, wax or anything like that. So I use it on engine bays, wheels, anything that's actually on something nice that you don't want to hurt, especially if you're working with polished surfaces, because I have had strong degreasers before that have actually damaged the polish, and then you've got to go back through and redo it all. So I just take a bit of this, give it a really good once over. Same thing on the other side. One thing to note with this stuff and any of the other cleaning agents that I'm using, make sure you never use these on a chain or any surface that you need to lubricate because it will take off any grease and oil and stuff from those surfaces. Alright, now the next thing I use is Grime Destroyer. I use this on pretty much everything on the bike after a ride. It gets rid of bugs, gets the tyres back to being black, gets brake dust off. It's just an amazing product. Alright, next up we're going to use Pacific Blue Wash and Wax in a foam can. Alright, we're going to leave that one to soak for a couple of minutes. Do its thing. It's going to look pretty good. Alright guys, well that is the end of the episode. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to see updates on the Hi-Song and the Dodge and the V-Star and all the other projects we've got in the works. Give us a like if you like the video, if you learned something, and comment if you have any extra questions. I'll answer them for you. See you guys.
I hit record a drop, you can't ignore it. I'm transforming now these cars and planes, I'm always boarding. Just out touring down in Charlotte like I play for Hornets. When I'm performing, never boring, now you can't afford it. Champagne.